Good afternoon. I am Brian Files for Healthcare Strategies Consulting Group, formerly with CVS Health. Please feel free to ask me anything you need to know. Well, what I've seen is that there is something which is going around in terms of people who have addressed DSCSA and serialization integration into supply chain, this phrase called unintended consequences. Based on some of the statutory language, the regulatory guidances, there was not a full intake or assessment of some of the small operations issues that may go on with different stakeholders in regards to 2D barcode applications, into the information flow processes, into the receiving of products across multiple stakeholders. The unintended consequences of not either due diligence or ferreting out these issues is that there's going to be some real-time errors that are also not really anticipated in the guidance of the laws. So what may be perceived as a 0.02% chance of either something happening or affecting the billions of packages, for an individual company perspective, that is huge. It causes some level of chaos to transitioning a product from being received from some of these stakeholders in the change to be applied and placed into your inventory to again move to different parts of the company, intercompany distribution. So I find that the unintended consequences, as we continue to go down this 10-year implementation track, will expound or expand as we get deeper towards the 2023 end line. So as long as either the commercial stakeholders take that into account or the FDA takes that into account and can adjust accordingly, that expansion of these errors or these unintended consequences, you just don't want them to be huge. Communication between some of the supply chain stakeholders has helped immensely. We're not there yet. I think a lot of the larger players have been in great communication because obviously they control much of the product flow in the supply chain. The smaller players in the world that I came from, the downstream pharmacy players, don't have the access or the critical mass to manage some of these different errors or unintended consequences that we talked about. So there are some interesting aspects that have to be ferreted out, and we have to get a nail down on the risk of what those intended consequences look like. (2023-2024), the implementation period from 2020, when serialization takes effect for all of the stakeholders in the U.S. supply chain, the gap between 2020 and 2023 in terms of what the statutory expectations versus the intent of the law, there's a long way to go. And without a true north vision of what 2023 looks like, which a lot of stakeholders have asked the FDA about, it's going to be hard to get there. I believe there's a huge demarcation between 20 and 23. The ultimate goal of what the intent of the law is to have electronic track and trace by unit through the entire system. The impact to the patient or the eventual customer to that, and what the responsibility is of the stakeholders to the ultimate end user will be different. It will be challenging. Will we be beholden to inquiries from dispensed product? There are some questions about decommissioning of product and where that's going to be taken care of. We want serialization. If there's an exception from the manufacturer, there has to be some movement out of product, and what does that eventual episode look like? I think the challenges of 2023, 2024 will hopefully have a solution to those issues, but let's get through the 2020 deadlines to meet 2023, because there's still a gap between what the expectations for the stakeholders are. I'm anticipating when we get into a serialized world from the manufacturers, the biggest one, and there has been recent guidance on grandfathering, is the unserialized product versus the serialized product. And for the entire supply chain to have command of where that product is and how that's being moved out with the accountabilities that the DSCSA requires, the compliance that's required. It's going to be a troubling time, because some of the partners are ready for 2D barcode capability, some aren't. So there's going to be a little bit of mix and match. There's going to be a need for an intense amount of communication between 2018 and 2020, and the extreme latitude by the FDA to understand and anticipate what the stakeholders are going through is going to be enormous. And I believe all the stakeholders think that the FDA, true to its moving of the deadline of serialization, will express that latitude for everyone to get it right, or at least be on the path of getting it right for commercial solutions. Probably the most important thing, and I think networking is overused, but in the DSCSA serialization planet per se, there are what I would call a finite amount of people who are actively involved. There are obviously, every corporation of any scale is involved with DSCSA from a compliance perspective, but the active participants who are looking for commercial solutions is pretty small. They always come to this event. So the discussions about FDA's latest move, latest guidances, troubleshooting, communication issues, and coordination among stakeholders is chiefly done at events just like IQPC. I've enjoyed it personally, because not only professionally have we been able to address issues in this small bandwidth of serialization efforts, but the personal accountability for people who want to get it right or be very efficient is there. So it's almost a check-in or a meeting point for everyone, at least at minimum on an annual basis, to really certify and accept and get acceptance for what they're trying to accomplish, both for the broader scale stakeholders and for the organizations.